Lots of people are freaking out / telling other people to stop freaking out about Tesla's Q1 delivery numbers. And I don't think it's all down to one singular reason like so many people claim. Tesla's claiming that, well, it's because Giga Berlin was shut down for a while due to these stupid arsonists, and the Model 3 refresh in Fremont that resulted in the assembly line being down for a little while. But we all know that the Model Y is Tesla's main bread and butter. They sell more Model Ys than anything else. And Troy Teslike has detailed to us how Tesla is growing in Model Y inventory, which is, despite all of these price hikes that they've been doing over the past couple of months, kind of weird, honestly. Inventory is growing for the Model Y, and Tesla's trying to do this kind of reverse psychology thing where they say, okay, we're going to raise the prices, hoping that results in more people buying, but then not more people do. Because essentially, Tesla's Q1 delivery numbers were around 8% lower than the same quarter was last year, and that's basically never happened in Tesla's history. And it was more like a decline of over 30% if we look quarter over quarter, which makes more sense because seasonally just less people buy cars in the first quarter compared to the fourth. But still, it doesn't exactly support Tesla's growth story. For so many years, they kept doubling down on we're going to grow about 50% every single year. They have this installed capacity that keeps growing and they keep expanding at their existing factories, but people weren't quite anticipating, even Wall Street and a lot of big Tesla analysts were not anticipating the deliveries to drop by this much, especially considering 2024 is the year that the point of sale federal tax credit went into place. A lot of people for years were theorizing that with that point of sale tax credit, demand would really skyrocket for Teslas, right? Because now we're just knopping off $7,500 from the price of the vehicle, and most of the Tesla bulls are basically saying, well, it's the interest rates. Most people are going to finance their car, and if the interest rates are super high, no one's going to go out and buy new cars. But I got to admit, they've brought down the vehicle prices a lot, like much, much lower than they used to be back when interest rates were low. So I don't think it's purely the interest rates, and a lot of the Tesla bears out there are saying that it's all because of Elon. He makes controversial tweets, and he's very right-leaning now, and a lot of people don't like that, of course. So it's clearly because people don't like the way Elon trolls around on Twitter, which, sure, there's probably some truth to that, but again, I don't think it's the bulk of it. There's one other scenario that I think is actually quite likely a big reason that a lot of people are not making the switch to EVs, and I don't see either Tesla bears or bulls really bringing this up much, so I thought we would address it in today's video and just acknowledge the fact that we might be reaching the threshold for the electric vehicle enthusiast community, as in the number of people in the general public that hate internal combustion engine vehicles enough that are willing to make the switch to an electric vehicle, that have home charging, that are willing to learn about batteries and charging curves and understand charging networks and stuff like that. There's probably a threshold in the general public to the number of people who are willing to learn and try something different, like an EV, and everybody that's interested in trying one has probably got one by now. There might be a limit on how many people are actually willing to make the switch, and maybe from here on out in the next coming years, as Tesla's trying to scale up into the multi-million vehicle deliveries per year, where you might have to try a lot harder than you thought you did. There's definitely a huge chunk of the public that wanted to switch to EVs as quickly as possible, like myself, but there's certainly a lot of people that are going to have a hard time justifying it if they're comfortable with gas vehicles. There's brands that they know and they trust. There's a lot of Ford fans out there, a lot of Subaru fans out there that just have reliable, consistent experiences, and they don't want to fuss around with figuring out batteries and how they perform in the cold. And I can't tell you how many people I've had ask me, how long does it take to charge up your Tesla? And I say, well, most of the time you don't charge to full, so that's why most of the time it's just a 20 to 25 minute stop. But if I did want to charge to full, it would take about an hour. But then the charging curve gets a lot slower when you get higher up the percentage. And by the time I finished explaining the answer, they just go, okay, that sounds complicated. It's too much for me. I'm just going to keep going with what I'm used to in driving around my gas car, because I know I can pull into any old gas pump, swipe my card, and fill up the fuel tank within a few minutes and be on my way. A lot of people are just comfortable with what they know, and I think that would partially explain why companies like BYD BYD also had a horrible quarter, mostly delivering vehicles in China, and they had a huge drop-off compared to the fourth quarter of the year. So once again, Tesla is now the world's largest EV automaker. They'll probably go back and forth, though, as the year goes on. But other companies like Toyota and Ford are still reporting pretty strong vehicle delivery growth, which does, in fact, mean that there's still a lot of people out there buying gas vehicles that cost the same price as a new Model Y or a new Model 3, if not more, and they're not interested in making the switch to EVs. And I know a lot of people out there are just convinced, well, Tesla just needs to advertise more. You just got to spend more money on advertising. We got to educate people on the advantages to EVs. But if people know what they want and they're comfortable with what they have, it's going to be a lot harder to justify switching to an EV for a lot of these people if they don't want all of their car to be connected and they don't want to do everything on a screen, or they don't want to have to figure out how battery charging curves work or battery preconditioning, especially if they live in the cold. I personally love electric vehicles. I'm willing to put up with a lot of compromises with my car if it means that I don't have a gas engine to worry about, if it means I never have to go to a gas pump again. I love software. I love having a phone app that's connected to my car so that I can manually pre-cool the cabin or preheat the cabin when I need to. I love breaking up the road trip with the supercharging stops. It makes it feel like it goes by a lot faster, honestly. And I love seeing the charging curve of the battery pack, and I love saving money on charging versus gas. But with so many states raising the price of registration and the cost of electricity continuously increasing in so many places, looking at EVs as a cheaper means of transportation is becoming a tougher and tougher sell to a lot of people, where it's like, okay, I might save a little bit, but if I don't save a lot, it's probably not worth considering, especially when so many are convinced that big batteries in EVs must catch on fire, and when they do, they burn for weeks at a time. Literally had a guy tell me that. And they also believe that EV batteries go bad after just a couple of years, and then you got to spend $15,000 to $25,000 replacing the high voltage battery, and things that we in the EV community know are not necessarily true, especially not true with LFP battery packs. But it doesn't matter, because a lot of the time people cling to these headlines, they cling to what the media is telling them, which means that if we go online and say, actually what you heard was wrong, they just go, okay, well, who's to say? If you said one thing and this reliable news agency said another, who am I supposed to believe? It sounds like the jury's still out on EVs. I'm just gonna keep on driving my gas car because I know that works. So personally, I think Tesla's still making the right moves to combat this. I know in the short term it looks bad. I don't think Tesla's doomed. I don't think EVs are no longer the future, but this is a problem with the general public that I think not enough people are addressing, is that maybe EV demand is not quite as infinite as Elon or Tesla or even the EV community thinks it is. There's a lot of people out there that may not be as eager to switch as we initially thought. And the smart thing to do, in my opinion, to combat that is not necessarily advertising. I've never thought advertising was a good means of education. That's why you find most car commercials are not very logical. They're never really trying to bank on numbers. They're always trying to bank on emotional responses or gut feelings, or they try to get you to laugh because they know that an emotional response to an ad usually makes a lasting impression. That's why there's so many Matthew McConaughey commercials, right? So I don't personally think advertising is going to help very much, but what I do think long term is going to make a lot more people consider electric vehicles is seeing friends and family members enjoy them and use them and appreciate them, and of course to make them far, far more affordable. And I know Tesla's done as much as they can with the Model Y and the Model 3 and the tax credits and the single piece castings and all that to make them as affordable as possible. But especially as I'm seeing supercharging in many places go 40 cents a kilowatt hour, 50 cents a kilowatt hour, and in a lot of places that's really not that much cheaper than gas, and even home charging is getting pretty pricey for a lot of people out there. You're not necessarily going to sell people on the whole concept of, well, EVs are cheaper after 5 years of ownership. No, what I think might actually make a lasting impact is Tesla's next generation vehicle platform. Even if it's just a boring old hatchback, the concept of making a compelling and useful and functional $25,000 Tesla, and especially start considering uses Tesla's no rare earth material powertrain and the Ethernet connections and their in-house design controllers, making more affordable EVs that are vastly superior to any gas car, that's even cheaper out the door. Like, you don't even have to factor in the cost of ownership. Just looking at the purchase price, it's objectively cheaper. That's what I think a lot more people might be willing to make the switch to an EV, and especially if you consider Tesla's $25,000 car being in production for a few years, and then you start finding used models that are in the $18,000, $15,000 range. That's when I think people might be a lot more curious, and right now I just don't think cost advantages are too abundantly clear for a lot of the public. And like I said, I don't think there's one singular reason we're seeing a decline in demand for EVs. Yes, the interest rates have an effect. I'm not denying that. Yes, Elon probably has an effect, but it's this big ambiguous pie chart of what role is each of these variables playing into the weakening demand for EVs. And I personally think it's this whole electrified transition that is just not making a lot of sense to a ton of the public, and it would make a lot more sense if the upfront price of the vehicles got a lot lower, and I think they will with time, especially with Tesla's vertical integration and also Aptera's approach towards extreme efficiency, enabling lower prices with really good range and more free charging from sunlight, which I think should be pursued more personally. I can't believe Aptera is like the only company right now looking into doing that, but making vehicles that are cheaper to own and easier to integrate into our daily lives, like the Aptera, which can have a 400-mile range and enough solar charging to cover people's daily driving habits, or super cheap vehicles like Tesla's next generation vehicle that will start undercutting pretty much every combustion engine car on the market. It's those kinds of prices that I think are going to sway a lot of people over, not advertising, not necessarily lower interest rates, because we all know that when the interest rates go down, Tesla's gonna just raise the prices back up to what they were before the interest rates, and then we'll be in the same predicament we are now. But I don't think the EV community is doomed or anything. I don't think Tesla's in trouble. I just think we should consider all possible variables as to why demand is dwindling, not rule out one or say that it is purely just this. If Elon stopped doing this, or if the interest rates went down, all of our problems would go away. No, I don't think it's that simple. I think there's a lot more to it than that, especially with the used market. That's another argument people are not paying attention to. EVs are aging pretty well, and there's a lot of people now that are willing to buy a Model 3 or Y from a couple of years ago, save themselves tens of thousands of dollars by getting it slightly used, and because EVs age so well, there's not that many downsides. There's not a lot of compromises to buying a Model Y from a couple of years ago. So, of course, when you don't refresh or incentivize your customers to buy the new car, yeah, they're gonna keep buying used because there's less and less reasons to buy new in the first place. That likely is having a big effect on the market as well, but what do you guys think? Am I wrong? Do you think that lots more people want to buy EVs, they simply can't because of the interest rates, or do you think it's all because of Elon, or do you agree with me that, yeah, there might be some people that are less interested in this EV transition because there's a lot of unfamiliarity with it, and they're not exactly convinced it's really gonna save them that much money anyway? All those thoughts, feel free to let me know what you're thinking down in the comments below, and thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos, so thanks again. Have an excellent rest of your day.